Okay. Oh, it's amazing. The sun rises in the east, it sets in the west, the moon rises, Venus and Jupiter in the sky. Like it still keeps going, cycle after cycle. Here we are again. It's a new moon. The seasons are changing, whether climate collapse, says, I don't know, it's extended heat or incredible humidity, but the sunlight wanes. We've passed the midpoint between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. There's just things that are still going to be facts, even though humans have impacted our climate and there's machines that control the weather. Look it up, So I swear, they just want to get to terraforming. You know what I mean? It's all just practicing. I say, let's make Earth work, right? Like, let's be here. All right, let's do right by here. That's my thought. So this is a new moon as we're gathering right now. We're coming up on the exact new moon. It'll be exact kind of middle of the night, Pacific time, like 11 p.m. the 22nd, 2 a.m. Eastern time, the 23rd. And um, it's a nice moon. The waters are deep, honestly, with the outer planets right now. Like that's the conjunctions with Uranus that's at play in this new moon. So this new moon is exact in sidereal Leo in a nakshatra, a lunar mansion called Maga. Leo, the lion, the sun, leadership, ego, expression. Also keep in mind, the lion is very lazy. The lion will only get up when the lion has to hunt. And the lion will like wait around to get hungry. So Leo, while it can have that young, fiery energy, it can also be really tamasic, really lazy vibes. It needs sometimes a catalyst for activation. Um, One of the things about the exact degrees of this new moon is this can be a little indicator for wealth growth like that. So it's kind of like there's a little luck, there's a little gold coins possibilities at this junction, depending on what's in your fate, what's available for you. Um, and this moon is conjunct with two of the other celestials. Yes, the lions wait for the lioness to do all of the work. We could definitely go deeper into what's also happening about the hunt for the lion, is that, yeah, actually Ma's doing all the work and he just lazy, So, lions are really fun to examine and are an animal that shows up a lot in spiritual symbolism and interpretation. So anywho, these two celestials that are involved directly in this moon, one of them is Ketu, who has been showing up at every moon lately since June in some capacity because Ketu is transiting in Leo, sidereal Leo. And Ketu is the south node of the moon. But in the Jyotish sidereal storytelling, a demon who really wanted to be a celestial when Vishnu was handing out assignments to be a celestial tried to sneak into Vishnu's court. And once he was caught, his head made it through. And Vishnu was alerted to his presence. Vishnu threw the discus, chopped off his head. So we have the north node of the moon, Rahu, unsatiable desire. Not necessarily a bad thing, it's just how you direct it, right? And then is the rest of the body of the demon, the headless, Ketu. So Ketu at one end of his headless spectrum is literally headless activity. We don't actually like headless activity. It leads to accidents. and things like that. We don't like headless activity. It leads to just senseless violence. It leads to things that we don't like so much. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, Ketu is cutting off the head of ignorance, cutting off disillusionment. Ketu is quite possibly the most spiritual planet or celestial that of influence. And so there is a very deep spiritual energy that is available at this moon. Now, a little thought bubble. I just started my doctoral studies. I'm already into quests around spirituality, religion, and intersection in society. And a question that I brought into this academic inquiry, a very simplified one, right? So, what is spirituality? How are we defining spirituality today, 2025? What is of actual substance, like probably 10% of what you find in the marketplace? And then there's the rest of this 90% of just reckless, commodified individualism starring as spirituality. A harsh critique. Layering in another factoid here. Since post-World War II, okay, post-war, there has been a societal shift from organized religion towards the cultivation of the individual. Subsequently, the entire field of psychotherapy, as it has evolved through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, these things are paralleling. You know what else is paralleling this? Moving from the Enlightenment construct, the economic systems that are part of that, meaning early capitalism, to the version that we have now, which is neoliberal capitalism. What I'm getting at here is it's more than one social structure in our construct that is pushing us, validating us towards the rugged individualism of the American brand. And so we just layer in the decolonization lens of, okay, who has access? Who gets access to this individualistic spirituality? Who can pay for it? And what are they doing? What are the spiritualists of now engaged in? So I think it's not enough to just say, this is a really spiritual moon. I want you to challenge yourself to consider, what does that actually mean for you? Both in how you define your spirituality and also how you express, somewhere in between there, how you cultivate. And so my question, as I popped it into the discussion board this morning, was how are we going to cultivate systems of spirituality moving forward that are more than just about the individual? How about individual and collective at the same time? How about this just inherent paradox that we ourselves are both individual and part of multiple collectives at the same time? Which leads us back to this moon. Maga, this place in the zodiac, is the seat of the Pitris. Often described as the father ancestors. I believe that the Pitris are non-binary. I do not believe that the Pitris are gendered. I don't believe that when we're naming the Pitris, the ancestors of multiple types of association that we're connected to, I don't think we're just talking about what came through your father line, known and unknown. Why do I think this? Because when I go and hang out with the Pitris, I am not just seeing the the bloodline ancestors of my father line. I'm seeing a conglomerate called the Pitris. You know, that name comes to us through this cultural tradition from South Asia, right? Many other indigenous traditions will have other names for the ancestors like this. But what we have arrived to is the beginning of another lunar month in the South Asian calendar. It's a turning of the seasons towards festival season. We just finished up Shiva's month. That's going to be all about the cleansing and purification. And now we come into like the clearing of the obstacles, the celebration of the abundance of first and second harvests. There's still more harvests to come. And it's called the fortnight of the ancestors. So this moon phase from the new moon to the full moon is a very special time of year where the ancestors are basically like, it's party time. We should be out here in these streets. You know, everything should be in this aesthetic abundance with the food and the flowers and the color and the geometries. So, what we're also going to have in that South Asian calendar is the start of the 10-day Ganesha Puja. And Ganesha has all sorts of lore and mythology. I think for today, we're going to tug on the string that's really about the remover of obstacles. Ganesha is the son of Shiva and Parvati, like this. So we're coming out of that month that's all about Shiva and preparation and purification. And we're starting this now lunar month that's really about like we've purified and now it's time to be in the rituals, to be in the sensuality, the sensuousness of it all, to be in celebration with the ancestors, because as the light wanes, the veil between the spirit world and the material world begins to thin. When it is at its thinnest is Samhain, around October 31st, November 1st. Like this. When the ancestors can just like show up, no problem. You know, no impediments like this. So if you are a spiritually sensitive person, literally like you interface with the spirit world, you might discover that that's increasing right now. That you just have greater access or more things are coming through or your experiences in the liminal states of consciousness are starting to alter and change. Everything's running a bit earlier this year in the South Asian calendar. And so typically this time would be 1 month later. I think it's because this is a year with an extra month in their count. So everything's pushed a little bit earlier. It's a lunar calendar, so it doesn't run like the Roman calendar, solar calendar, or as I saw it the other day, the civil calendar. I like this, governmental calendar. So it's going to be a blink and it'll be September 22nd. And we're already into the Durga Puja. We're into the fall goddess portal. So if you've been feeling intuitively like summer's over, you know, the pull into the activity of autumn, or if you're really registering the doyo, Japanese concept, the in-between season, yeah, that's because in a spiritual energetic sense, it's moving earlier this year. The sun wanes, is less and less sunlight. You know, the fall equinox will be here also in no time. Same time as that fall goddess puja. And then we really start to take our pivot into the yin, rejuvenative, restful time of year. So the invitation around all of this seasonal awareness and these cycles is how can we be designing our lifestyles, our workloads, our rest time, our healing time in harmony with the seasons. And every year presents us with an opportunity for newer experiments. That may also coincide with your own healing journey, your own health journey, and what you're discovering season by season. This moon, I named Ketu. Maga, the place of this nakshatra, is a place of deep healing. So what's really alive at this moon is if you want to focus on your healing journey, you're going to be boosted and bolstered. That's what's really going to come with a lot of juice and possibly bear fruit as soon as the full moon, like this. The other conjunction of this moon that's exact is where Uranus is transiting in sidereal Taurus in the nakshatra of Kritika, which is a very active, fiery, can be cruel, severe place. It's also a place of deep femme wisdom. The symbol of Kritika is the chopper blade. So Kritika is no nonsense. Just before Kritika was Bharani, whose symbol is the yoni, right? So these two they have a relationship of like cutting through the bullshit, straightforward, Sometimes we need scalpel. Sometimes healing is surgery. And we want the scalpel to be very sharp and the surgeon to be precise. Who was just before Bharani? The surgeon, the Ashwinis, the doctors. Like this, so there's actually a storytelling as the nakshatras evolve. They are interrelated, and who's next to each other really matters in the storytelling. So Uranus, outer planet, which means it's going to point us towards the collective. That doesn't mean that there's not a personal sphere of influence. Uranus is dubbed the planet of revolution, change, sudden change. So this moon could hold sudden lightning-like change, like the Tower card in the tarot, like this. You won't be able to predict it. You won't see it coming either. But if it does show up, your best response is either letting go, and or receptivity. Maybe a little sprinkle of gratitude won't go amiss either. So this could be, I don't know, kind of a fun and exciting moon. There's healing energy and there's spiritual energy. It's all what you're going to engage. But let's say you're not going to engage the higher octave of this moon. Then this can be a not fun moon also, like that. If you want to engage the spiritual and healing aspects of it, it's there for you. That. But each individual has a choice of what they will choose. And generally, those choices are informed by our desires, our karmas, the undertow pulling current. And so sometimes when we want to choose the higher thing, you're going to have to swim hard. You're going to have to put in effort. I know, like we're conditioned in this version of the material world to look for the easiest thing. If it's not easy, forget about it. But I don't know. My life doesn't work that way. I have to work hard for everything. Luckily, I like hard work and I'm healthy and strong. And so I'm able to do it. The times in my life where I haven't been healthy and strong, it was like a mountain that I could not climb. this. So your health and well-being is your wealth. There is no other wealth, actually, than your health. If you just wanted to make your health the center point, the focus, even the spiritual focus, I would like you to know that that's a really nice choice. That works. That works, especially maybe with an ethic, like perhaps, with an ethic of I'm making myself well so that I can fully express my gifts in this world for the benefit of all beings. That's my spiritual outlook. I also like service. Like my entire life is just service oriented, so I'm really clear on my mission and my values. I'm clear on my gifts. And then other than that, I just got to be out here living this life in the playground here, you know, a moment to plug the upcoming course in the Human Purpose Handbook. Like it's a really, I was meditating on it yesterday. I was like, it's so perfectly timed with this moon, and these energies right now. This is the perfect time of year to explore. But that's what happens when you just let the ancestors design their own courses. Like they're going to align the topics with the proper seasons and stuff. I was like, God, you guys did such an amazing job. We're going to do the Human Purpose Handbook, and then we'll go into like ancestors and then end it with death and dying. I was like, that is just seasonal alignment, y'all. That is beautiful. So this is the thing. The ancestors, they're not just whispering in our ears, they're shouting right now because we're so, hard of hearing in terms of their voice and connection. They're here to cheerlead. We exist in a co-creative relationship that at the heart is all about healing. And quite possibly the core reason why we come to earth and we take these earthly bodies is to be flawed, to experience ignorance and greed and anger and delusion, and my favorite one, lust, to experience these things as central to the transcendental experience, the healing experience. We're not inherently wrong or bad. There's no part of us that needs to be scrubbed or bypassed. Every single aspect of us is perfect, especially our flaws. We just don't know what the game is about here. We're at a distinct loss that we don't know the birthright knowledge of the ancestors of why we come here and what it is we're supposed to do while we're here. In the meantime, those with power have absolutely run amok. And now we're living, I don't want to say stuck, but we're living through the faulty system that's like, we should believe that everything is scarce, all resources are scarce, and there's just one aspect of the population that should have access, and everybody else should grovel and uphold those who have access to the resources, and we should hoard, and we should treat the natural resources of Earth like they're fine, they're infinite when we know they're not. Still trying to wrap my head around that one, and just essentially live with so much fear that we're making incredibly dumb choices in terms of Earth's resources and continuing to make savage, grotesque choices towards one another. For what outcome may I know? For what end game? For what vision or plan? Who benefits in that plan? I'm pretty sure it's nobody. And that includes the people who are the architects of so-called plans. Not that I think they have actual plans. So it's our job to stay awake. It's our job to continue to ask the questions. It's our job to keep our sanity. It's our job to heal for the longevity of the potential for collective change and transformation, for collective liberation. The thesis remains the same, but we can't state it enough. So let's see if we read a little about this nakshatra, if there's a few more of these spiritual tidbits for us. Like this, I'm reading from Bepin Bihari's Myths and Symbols of Vedic Astrology. This is about Maga. Okay. Maga is in the sign of Leo, governed by the sun. The deity presiding are the Pitris, the great ancestors of humanity. The planet Ketu rules this nakshatra. And it has two symbols, a palanquin and a house. So the fathers are Vedic deities, the Pitris, who have the special responsibility of guiding the evolutionary course of the families and races entrusted to their care. They intervene in their progeny's lives and relationships only when serious digression or major diversion from the right course occurs. As long as progress is according to the desired pattern, they merely watch and nourish by their influence. So they have a nourishing influence. They're benevolent. They're benefic. They function like guardian angels, giving protection in the event of major calamities. Otherwise, they are mere observers trying to unfold their descendants' faculties and growth in the exuberance of divine blessings. Their influence is also directed toward maintaining the tradition and cultural purity of those that they look over. I am sure it will be a very interesting thing to talk with the ancestors about in today's day and age. All the mixing and the mingling and the forces of globalization, and I bet they have a very different project right now. Up to this point in the zodiac, the various asterisms are concerned with formulating the matrix of growth. With Maga begins concretization. At this stage, the soul in its individualized form begins to manifest outwardly its archetype. The contraction of idea into form induces the spirit to long for the freedom lost in the process of encasement. This craving for its lost original nature is expressed as ambition, family pride, racial superiority, class status, and the urge to jump from the actual to the ideal. Oh, reading that, I'm having a thought like about decolonization and all of our different like racial identities, class statuses, these inherited systems, and the role of the ancestors in us liberating ourselves from these unnecessary constructs. It's just interesting because these constructs are not ancestral constructs. Constructs that the author is naming in terms of race and class and, ableism and orientations of all sorts, like those are modern constructs. So I wonder what the ancestors helped with before we were stuck inside of these constructs. It's a curiosity. Restlessness arising from the feeling of restriction, and through restlessness, the arousal of the urge to reacquire the lost paradise, concretized this asterism. Maga marks the beginning of tamasic proclivities. It is expressed as sloth, the lion, and the desire to stay put instead of the moving forward, which comes through the rajasic tendency of the first third of the asterism. Rajas impels the incarnating soul to immerse itself in materiality, which attains its deepest point under Ashlesha. At this stage, the Nagas impart ultimate wisdom and bid the soul to proceed further according to the intelligence thus acquired to complete the evolutionary impulse. The archetype is thereby impressed on the finer atoms of the being, and the soul acquires. So interesting. This like aspect of the nakshatras and the evolution and involutionary flow, this like spiral journey. I don't know. It's deep. The situation produces a contradictory tendency. The earlier impulse induced the soul to proceed further, while the new influences of tamasic nature, beginning with Magga, exert a decelerating motion. Under Magga, therefore, one experiences conflict. This is emphasized by the secondary and tertiary rajasic or active qualities of the asterism. One part of the being urges the soul to swift action, while the other puts a brake to bring movement to a halt. Magga leads to substantial psychological tension and frustration. The symbol of the palanquin associated with Magga reveals its inner drive. At this stage, the soul in its fullness, as a representative of the Supreme, embarks upon its material journey. Ashlesha bestows the wisdom of the Nagas, so Ashlesha came just before, enabling the soul to hold within itself all the divine attributes necessary for completing its mundane journey. Under Magga, the soul begins the outer journey ordained for it. The palanquin symbolizes the soul's preparedness for the journey. On a chariot, the king goes into the battlefield, but on a palanquin, he undertakes his usual visitations. The palanquin and chariot are both modes of transportation, but quite different from each other. This distinguishes the basic nature of the two asterisms with which they are associated. The chariot is associated with Rohini, while the palanquin refers to Magga. A chariot is generally associated with the army, while the palanquin is for the nobles and the elite. A chariot is pulled by horses, an inferior level of creation, while the palanquin is carried by human beings. This shows that the individual in the palanquin enjoys special status among people. A chariot is pulled on wheels, but the palanquin is built around the central, generally undulated pole. The wheel represents divine perfection and the nature's inherent creative impulse. This impulse leads to gradual involution of the spirit into matter. Such is the influence of the fourth asterism, Rohini. But the undulated pole, generally made of bamboo, has several knots in it, which symbolically relate to the spinal cord, within which is concealed the serpent fire or kundalini. The servants who carry the palanquin represent the 5 organs of action and the 5 sense organs, which carry the soul where it wants to go. At Magga, the human individual is bestowed with divine capabilities. The soul is informed of its divine mission and is stationed at the place wherefrom it can make its onward journey. This also shows the significance of the house, the other symbol of this asterism. At this stage of evolution, the individual has to make up their mind, take decisions, and direct their faculties towards the destined goal. The human soul has reached a situation where the natural impulses guiding their progress cease, and they are required to take stock of their resources and regulate their own actions. We were talking about this. The house emphasizes the human body as a vehicle of the Supreme, while the palanquin refers to an external means of transportation. The comparison between the human body and a house is often found in spiritual literature. The great Vedantic philosopher Shankara explains this comparison in great detail. And Vivekachudamani, verse 92. The physical sheath sustains and nourishes the individual as well as provides the necessary means of action. All right, now he's got a biblical reference. I'm good. At Maga, the divine radiance produces the human being complete in their material sheaths so that they can fulfill their divine mission. This characteristic of the asterism is accentuated by the fact that it starts the fifth sign of the zodiac, ruled by the sun. Leo is full of life-giving energy. Under Maga, the soul is pushed out into the world with abundant energy and courage. This is the stage of reproduction. Regeneration and reproduction are necessary to continue the process of manifestation. Ketu, which rules this asterism, is a karmic planet under whom the past is worked out. The soul imbibing the influence of Maga is induced to carry forth its earthly pilgrimage under the karmic impulse. The personal tendencies are subordinated to the divine mission, but in this involvement, the individual, though not specifically attached to material ease and comfort, often experiences them. Under favorable influences, Maga bestows much affluence, physical comforts, sexual happiness, and the luxuries of life. But the individual concerned is not psychologically so much involved with these. She wants to follow the ideal and carry out her inner purpose in life. Generally speaking, Maga makes the person an idealist amidst material affluence. This makes people suspect their integrity and honesty of purpose, which often makes the individual feel sad. But this is what all true idealists must suffer. And so we return full circle to the ideas shared in the beginning. What is the purpose that you would like to live? The choices that we make are not what creates the possibility. The possibilities have already been decided before you came. What are you gonna choose? Make a choice, have the courage to stick with it, and carry on. Affluence and comfort may also be available for you. That's nice. But if it's the spiritual journey that you're truly committed to, you will appreciate the boon of the comforts, but you will not form an attachment around them. And such is the beauty available to us here in the material world. The great abundance can flow, but it's really not material abundance that we're actually looking for, because we're actually here on a divine mission. And so here we are at this moon in a moment of materiality. And so, what will you choose? I pause here. This is the download. Best of luck. We'll check in at the full moon. See how it's going.